"You cannot come in dressed like that," the man at the door said, loud enough for the people waiting beneath the awning to hear. Danielle Brooks stood still as rain slid from the edge of her dark wool coat and tapped against the black stone sidewalk. Behind the glass doors, Aurora Lounge glowed with amber light, polished brass, and the soft movement of people who had never been asked to prove they belonged in a room. Danielle looked past the man toward the lobby. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass. A black woman in a simple cream sweater, dark slacks, low heels damp from the walk, and a canvas tote pressed against her side. Nothing about her looked dramatic. Nothing about her announced that she owned half the building. That was the point. "I am meeting someone," she said. Her voice was calm. Trent Caldwell adjusted the cuff of his tailored charcoal jacket and gave her a thin smile. He was the general manager of Aurora Lounge, though Danielle had only seen him in quarterly reports and carefully staged staff photographs. In person, he looked exactly like the kind of man who believed a room became better when he decided who could enter it. "Members arrive through the side entrance," Trent said, "and guests are expected to follow the dress code." Danielle glanced at the brass sign beside the door. The words Aurora Lounge were etched beneath a small line that read, "A Brooks Hospitality Property." Rain blurred the letters, but she could still read them. "What part of my clothing is against the dress code?" she asked. Trent looked at her coat, then at her tote, then at the wet pavement beneath her shoes. "We try to maintain a certain atmosphere." A couple standing behind Danielle shifted awkwardly. The woman looked away first. Inside, a young hostess with a sleek ponytail and a black uniform stood near the reservation stand. Her name tag read Maya. She watched Trent with wide, worried eyes. Danielle noticed the way Maya's fingers tightened around a stack of menus. "I only need a table for one," Danielle said. "Near the windows, if possible." Trent let out a quiet breath through his nose. "Ma'am, I think there are plenty of places nearby that may be more comfortable for you." The rain seemed louder after that. Danielle felt cold water slipping beneath the collar of her coat, but she did not move. She had spent years walking into boardrooms where men paused when she entered, then recovered too quickly. She had learned that people often revealed themselves before they knew who was watching. "What is your name?" she asked. Trent's smile held. "Trent Caldwell. And you are the manager tonight?" "I am." Danielle nodded once, as if confirming a detail on a list. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell." He opened the door a few inches, not to welcome her, but to make his next words sound final. "I need you to leave the entrance clear." Maya took one small step forward from inside. "Mr. Caldwell," she said softly, "there is an open table by the east window." Trent did not turn toward her. "Maya, return to your station." The young woman froze. Danielle looked at her, then back at Trent. In the warm lobby behind him, guests lifted glasses beneath chandeliers that reflected like small stars in the marble floor. Outside, Danielle stood in the rain beneath the name of the company she had built from a single borrowed desk and a promise to her late father that every guest would be treated with dignity. She did not raise her voice. She did not reach for her phone. She simply looked at Trent and said, "A room tells you what it is by how it treats the person it thinks has no power." For the first time, his smile disappeared. Trent's smile vanished, but only for a second. Then he straightened his shoulders and looked past Danielle as if she had become an inconvenience already scheduled into his evening. "I am not interested in a lecture," he said. "I am interested in keeping this entrance clear." The rain moved in silver lines between them. Danielle could hear the muted piano from inside, a slow melody softened by the thick glass doors. She looked at the small brass plaque beside the entrance again, then at the line of guests waiting behind her. No one spoke. A man in a camel coat checked his phone. A woman with a pearl-colored umbrella studied the sidewalk. The silence had its own shape. It was neat. It was polished. It was familiar. Danielle shifted her tote higher on her shoulder. "Then answer one question," she said. Trent crossed his arms. "I have already answered enough. What is the dress code?" His eyes flicked over her coat once more. "Smart casual. Appropriate attire. Guests should look presentable." Danielle glanced down at her cream sweater, pressed slacks, and low leather heels. "And I do not." Trent's jaw tightened. "I am saying this lounge has standards." Behind the reservation stand, Maya lowered her eyes. Her hands still held the menus, but one corner had bent beneath her grip. Danielle noticed a small silver pin on Maya's collar, shaped like a crescent moon. It reminded her of the pins her first employees had worn years ago, back when Aurora had only one small restaurant and a payroll that kept Danielle awake at night. She had promised herself then that no one working for her would have to swallow disrespect just to keep a job. Maya, Danielle said gently. The young hostess looked up, startled. Trent turned sharply. She is busy. Danielle did not look away from Maya. Is there a table available? Maya hesitated. Her eyes moved to Trent, then to the glowing dining room. Yes, she said quietly. There are 3. Trent's expression hardened. Maya. The single word carried a warning. Maya's face changed at once. Her shoulders drew inward, and Danielle understood that this was not the first time she had been made to feel small at that door. Thank you, Danielle said. That is all I needed to know. Trent stepped closer to the entrance, still careful not to touch her. Ma'am, I am asking you to leave. Danielle looked at the rainwater gathering at the edge of the sidewalk. Are you refusing service? I am using my judgment as the manager. Based on what? Trent gave a short laugh with no warmth in it. You are making this harder than it needs to be. Danielle's voice stayed even. No, I am asking you to say what you mean. The guests behind her became very still. A server passing through the lobby slowed near the bar, then quickly looked away. Trent leaned toward the door, lowering his voice as though quietness could make the words less cruel. This is a private lounge. We do not let just anyone walk in from the street and claim a table. Danielle felt the sentence settle in the cold air. She could have told him then. She could have opened her phone and shown him the ownership records, the board calendar, the email from Victor Lane confirming the morning meeting. Instead, she thought of the complaint reports that had been arriving in vague, cautious language for months. Guests felt unwelcome. Staff felt pressured. Incidents were resolved locally. She had read those phrases between flights, believing they were problems of training, not symptoms of something deeper. I understand, Danielle said. Trent seemed relieved by her calm. Good. Please write down the time, she added. 8:47. His relief disappeared. Why would I do that? Danielle looked toward the security camera above the door. Its small red light blinked steadily through the reflection of the chandelier. Because this moment matters, she said. Maya's eyes widened. Trent followed Danielle's gaze to the camera, then back to her face. For the first time, uncertainty entered his expression. Danielle stepped away from the door and into the ring. She did not hurry. She did not look back until she reached the curb. Across the street, the lobby of the neighboring hotel glowed warm and quiet beneath a wide awning. Danielle paused there, water shining on the shoulders of her coat, and pulled out her phone. The first message she opened was not to the board. It was to herself, saved months ago beside a folder of unresolved complaints. It read, Look closer. The hotel lobby across the street smelled of lemon polish, wet wool, and coffee that had been sitting too long on a silver warmer. Danielle chose a chair near the window where she could see Aurora lounge through the rain. From there, it looked beautiful. Amber light spilled across the marble floor. People moved behind the glass with easy confidence, their laughter softened by distance. The lounge had been designed to make people feel seen. Danielle had spent years choosing every detail, from the warm brass lamps to the low music that never forced anyone to speak too loudly. Tonight, it looked like a place she did not recognize. She opened the folder on her phone labeled Guest Experience Review. The first complaint was from 6 months earlier. A black couple had arrived for a reservation and been told the dining room was full, only to watch 2 other guests without reservations be seated 10 minutes later. The report ended with a short note from management. Miscommunication resolved. The next complaint came from a Latina server who wrote that certain guests were treated as suspicious before they had done anything wrong. The response read, Coaching provided. Danielle scrolled farther. A disabled veteran had been asked to move from a lounge chair because it was reserved for preferred members. A young black man had been followed through the lobby by security after asking where the restroom was. A bartender had reported that Trent told staff to protect the atmosphere at all costs. Each complaint had been filed, softened, and closed. Danielle felt something cold settle beneath her ribs. Not surprise. Something worse. Recognition. The pattern had been there, waiting beneath polished language. Her phone rang. Victor Lane's name appeared on the screen. Victor was the regional operations director, a white man with silver hair, careful manners, and a talent for making serious problems sound temporary. Danielle answered. Victor. Danielle, I heard there was an issue at Aurora, he said. His voice was smooth, almost tired. Trent said a guest became confrontational at the entrance. Danielle watched Trent through the rain. He was speaking to Maya near the reservation stand. Maya kept her head down. Did he say who the guest was? Danielle asked. There was a pause. No. Should he have? No, Danielle said. He should have said what happened. Victor exhaled slowly. Trent can be blunt, but he protects the brand. Danielle looked at the folder on her phone. Does he? Danielle, it is Friday night. Let us not turn one misunderstanding into a crisis. She closed her eyes for a moment. Her father had taught her that a business could survive a bad quarter, a bad review, even a bad decision. What it could not survive was a culture that learned to hide harm behind polite words. It is already a crisis, she said. Victor's tone changed. What do you mean? Danielle looked back at Aurora. Maya was standing alone now, holding menus against her chest while Trent greeted a couple in expensive coats with a smile that had never been offered to Danielle. I mean, you will be at headquarters tomorrow at 8 o'clock, Danielle said. Bring the last 2 years of incident reports, staff complaints, security logs, and guest removal records. Victor was silent. Danielle, what is this about? The culture, she said, and the people who decided it was easier not to see it. She ended the call before he could answer. A few minutes later, the hotel door opened behind her. Maya stepped inside, rain clinging to the sleeves of her uniform. She looked nervous, as if she expected someone to pull her back across the street. In her hand was a black umbrella. You left this, Maya said. Danielle looked at it, then at the young woman's face. Thank you. Maya held the umbrella out, but did not release it. I am sorry, she whispered. I should have said something. Danielle stood slowly. You tried, she said. Maya's eyes filled, but she blinked the feeling away. Trying is not the same as helping. Danielle took the umbrella gently. No, she said, but it can be the beginning of helping. Outside, rain ran down the windows in long, clear lines. Across the street, Aurora Lounge glowed as if nothing had happened. Danielle looked at Maya and said, Tomorrow, you will have another chance to tell the truth. This time, you will not have to stand alone. At 7:58 the next morning, Aurora Hospitality headquarters was quiet enough to hear the elevator cables hum behind the walls. Danielle stood alone at the far end of the executive conference room, looking down at the city through 30 floors of glass. The rain had stopped, but the streets below still shone dark and clean. On the table behind her sat 4 folders, a laptop, and a carafe of coffee no one had poured. At 8 o'clock exactly, Victor Lane entered with Trent Caldwell beside him. Victor carried a leather briefcase and the careful expression of a man who had spent years surviving difficult meetings by speaking softly. Trent wore a navy suit, a silver watch, and the same controlled confidence he had worn at the lounge door. He did not recognize Danielle at first. You said this was about incident reports, Victor said, setting down his briefcase. Danielle turned from the window. Trent stopped. For one brief second, the color left his face. He looked at her cream sweater, her dark slacks, the canvas tote resting beside the chair at the head of the table, and then at the small nameplate in front of it. Danielle Brooks, Chief Executive Officer. The room held still. Victor looked from the nameplate to Danielle, then back to Trent. Danielle, he said carefully, I did not realize you were involved. That was the problem, Danielle replied. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Trent pulled out a chair, but he did not sit. Ms. Brooks, I had no idea who you were last night. Danielle looked at him. You did not need to know who I was. The words landed with the same quiet weight they had carried in the rain. Trent opened his mouth, then closed it. Victor reached for the coffee cups, perhaps hoping movement would make the room feel ordinary again. I am sure there has been a misunderstanding, he said. Danielle turned the laptop toward them. On the screen was a still image from the entrance camera. Rain. Glass doors. Trent standing between Danielle and the lounge. Maya visible in the background, holding menus against her chest. There was no sound in the clip, but Danielle did not need it. This is not one misunderstanding, she said. She tapped the stack of folders. These are 2 years of complaints. Guests denied service without clear reasons. Employees pressured to stay quiet. Security logs with no explanation beyond protecting the atmosphere. Victor's face tightened. We addressed those reports. You closed them, Danielle said. That is not the same thing. Trent finally sat down. His hands were folded neatly on the table, but one thumb kept moving against the other. I was enforcing standards, he said. Danielle met his eyes. Tell me what standard I failed last night. Trent looked toward Victor. Victor did not answer. You arrived in wet clothing, Trent said. You did not have a reservation. Danielle nodded once. And the 3 guests Maya said could be seated? Trent's silence answered first. Were they dressed differently? She asked. Did they have reservations? The air conditioner clicked softly above them. Trent's jaw tightened. I made a judgment call. Yes, Danielle said. You did. The conference room door opened, and Maya stepped inside with a human resources representative. She wore a simple black blouse instead of her lounge uniform. Her shoulders were tense, but her chin was raised. Trent looked at her sharply. Danielle noticed it. Maya is here voluntarily, Danielle said. She is protected from retaliation. She will not be asked to defend herself for telling the truth. Maya took a seat near the end of the table. Her hands trembled once before she placed them flat against the folder in front of her. Danielle looked around the room, at the men who had mistaken silence for order, and at the young woman who had been asked to carry fear alone. Then she said, We are not here to discuss whether last night was uncomfortable. We are here to decide whether this company is willing to become what it claims to be. Danielle let the silence remain after Maya took her seat. It was not a punishment. It was space, the kind that people rarely gave to someone who had spent too long being interrupted. Maya looked down at the folder in front of her, then lifted her eyes toward the human resources representative. I have worked at Aurora for 11 months, she said. Her voice was soft at first, but clear. Mr. Caldwell told us there were guests we should make feel welcome and guests we should make feel like they made a mistake coming in. Trent shifted in his chair. That is not what I said. Maya's fingers tightened once against the paper. Danielle did not look at Trent. Please let her finish. Maya took a breath. He did not always use those exact words. But we understood. If someone did not look like the people he expected, we were told to check reservations twice. We were told to say the dining room was full even when it was not. We were told not to make a scene. Victor lowered his eyes. Danielle watched him, not with anger, but with the steady attention of someone finally seeing where the silence had been coming from. Did you report this? Danielle asked. Maya nodded. I told a supervisor once. They said Mr. Caldwell was difficult, but he brought in money. They said I should focus on doing my job. Trent leaned forward. Maya, you know I never asked you to discriminate against anyone. The human resources representative raised a hand. Mr. Caldwell, do not address the witness directly. His face tightened. Danielle opened another folder and slid several printed pages across the table. These are statements from former employees, she said. They describe the same pattern. They also describe complaints being sent upward and returned with no action. Victor looked at the papers, but did not touch them. We were trying to protect the business, he said. Danielle's gaze moved to him. From what? Victor looked toward the rain-cleaned windows. From bad publicity. From conflict. From losing high-paying members. Danielle's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew colder. So you protected the business by allowing people to be treated as less than human. Victor swallowed. That was not the intention. Intent does not erase impact, Danielle said. Trent looked at the camera still on the laptop screen. I made a mistake last night, he said. I am willing to apologize. Danielle nodded slowly. An apology is not a replacement for accountability. She stood and walked to the window. Below, the city moved through the morning. Umbrellas opening on sidewalks, buses pulling away from curbs, people carrying coffee and briefcases toward places where they hoped to be treated fairly. Aurora was built on the idea that hospitality is not a performance, she said. It is a promise. A guest should not need a title, a bank account, or the right clothes to be treated with basic dignity. She turned back to the table. Effective immediately, Mr. Caldwell, your employment is terminated. Trent's face went still. The words did not arrive with drama. They arrived like a door closing on a pattern that had been allowed to continue too long. You cannot do this over one incident, he said. Danielle looked at the folders. I am not doing this over one incident. She faced Victor next. You are suspended pending an independent review of every complaint, every security log, and every report you closed without investigation. Victor's shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked less like an executive and more like a man who understood the cost of looking away. Maya sat quietly, her eyes bright but steady. Danielle returned to the head of the table. Maya, You are not being asked to become the face of this failure, she said. You are being offered protection, paid leave if you want it, and a choice about what comes next. Maya looked at her, surprised. A choice? Danielle nodded. That is what should have been given to you from the beginning. Outside, sunlight broke through the clouds and touched the glass walls of the conference room. It did not make the room warmer. Not yet, but it made everything visible. By noon, the conference room had emptied, but Danielle remained at the head of the table with the folders spread before her like a map of every place the company had failed to look. Maya sat across from her, no longer holding menus, no longer standing behind a reservation desk where every word had to be measured. The human resources representative had offered to walk her downstairs, but Maya had asked for 5 more minutes. Outside the windows, the city had turned bright after the rain. Sunlight flashed on passing cars and warmed the tops of the buildings, but inside the room, the air still carried the quiet weight of what had been said. You do not have to decide anything today, Danielle told her. Maya looked down at the printed statements. I thought I would feel relieved. You may, Danielle said. Later, Maya gave a small nod. I keep thinking about all the times I told myself it was not my place. Danielle folded her hands on the table. It was never your responsibility to fix a system that made you afraid. Maya looked up, but I still stayed quiet. You were trying to keep your job, Danielle said. That is not the same as agreeing with what was happening. The young woman's eyes filled, but she blinked and steadied herself. Danielle reached for a blank sheet of paper and turned it toward her. If you could change one thing at Aurora first, what would it be? Maya stared at the page. I would make it safe for staff to speak before something gets worse, she said, without having to wonder if they will lose their paycheck. Danielle nodded. Then that will be the first thing. In the hallway outside, Victor stood near the elevator with his briefcase at his feet. He had not left. When Danielle stepped out, he straightened slowly. I should have stopped it, he said. Danielle looked at him without rushing to soften the moment. Yes, she said. Victor's face tightened. I told myself Trent was difficult, but effective. I told myself the complaints were isolated. You told yourself that because it was easier, Danielle replied. He nodded, eyes lowered. I know. Danielle held the folder against her side. The review will decide what happens next. Until then, do not contact staff. Do not try to explain this away. Victor looked at her. I will not. She walked past him toward the elevator, and Maya followed a few steps behind. In the lobby, employees moved carefully through the polished space, their voices lower than usual. News had traveled, not through an announcement, but through the sudden absence of the people everyone had learned to watch. Danielle stopped near the reception desk. A young maintenance worker was replacing a light bulb in a floor lamp, standing on a short step stool while another employee held it steady. Danielle watched them for a second, then looked at the receptionist. Please send a message to every Aurora location, she said. Tell them we are beginning an independent review of guest treatment, employee concerns, and management conduct. Tell them no one will be punished for speaking honestly. The receptionist nodded quickly. Should I say it is from the executive office? Danielle considered the question. Say it is from me, she said. Later that afternoon, Danielle returned to Aurora Lounge alone. The entrance was quiet in daylight. The brass letters beside the door caught the sun, and the sidewalk was dry except for a thin dark line where rainwater had gathered near the curb. She stood beneath the awning for a moment, remembering Trent's voice, Maya's bent menus, the guests who had looked away. Then the door opened from inside. A server she did not recognize stepped forward, nervous but polite. Welcome, he said. Would you like a table? Danielle looked past him into the empty lounge. The chandeliers were off. Chairs rested upside down on tables. Without the music and laughter, the room looked smaller than it had the night before. Not today, she said. The server nodded. Danielle turned back toward the street, then paused. What is your name? He blinked. Jordan. Thank you, Jordan, she said. His expression changed, just slightly. It was not trust. Trust would take longer. But it was the beginning of being seen. Danielle walked away beneath the clear afternoon sky, carrying no victory in her hands, only a list of work that had finally become impossible to ignore. The first message arrived before sunset. It came through the new confidential reporting line, plain and short, with no name attached. I was told to seat certain guests in the back, even when better tables were open. Danielle read it in her office with the city turning copper outside the windows. A second message followed 10 minutes later. I was warned not to question security when they followed black guests. Then a third. Then 6 more. Each one was careful. Each one sounded like someone speaking through a door they had been afraid to open. Danielle did not call a public meeting. She did not send out a polished statement about values. Instead, she asked the independent review team to come in the next morning, and she told them to begin with the people who had the least power to protect themselves. By 9 o'clock, a small conference room on the second floor had been rearranged. The long executive table was gone. In its place were simple chairs in a circle, a coffee station, bottled water, and a box of tissues placed quietly near the window. Maya arrived early in jeans and a soft brown sweater. She stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the circle of chairs as if it belonged to another building. Danielle was already there, placing name cards face down on a side table. "You do not have to use your name if you do not want to," Danielle said. Maya looked at the blank cards. "Will people really be protected?" Danielle met her eyes. "They will be protected, and if anyone retaliates, they will answer to me." Maya nodded, though trust did not arrive all at once. It moved slowly, like morning light across a floor. The first employee to speak was Jordan. He sat with both hands wrapped around a paper cup and stared at the carpet while he talked. "I thought I was doing my job," he said. "I was told to watch people who did not fit the image. I did not know what to say when it felt wrong." Danielle listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Thank you for telling the truth. You are not here to be punished for learning." Jordan looked up, surprised by the words. Across the room, Maya took a breath. "It was not only the guests," she said. "It was how staff were treated when we asked questions. We were told that if we could not handle the culture, we could be replaced." Her voice shook once, then steadied. "That is why people stayed quiet." Danielle looked around the circle. No one looked away this time. Near the door, an older bartender named Luis rubbed his thumb against the rim of his cup. "I saw it too," he said. "I told myself I was too close to retirement to get involved." He looked toward Maya. "I am sorry." Maya did not rush to forgive him. She only nodded, and that was enough for the moment. By noon, the room was full of details that could not be hidden inside phrases like miscommunication or coaching provided. Danielle wrote each one down. Unequal seating. Unexplained removals. Staff warnings. Security decisions made on instinct instead of behavior. When the last person left, Maya remained by the window. "I thought firing Trent would fix everything," she said. Danielle stood beside her. Below them, people crossed the street in every direction, carrying umbrellas, lunch bags, and pieces of their ordinary lives. "Firing him stopped one person," Danielle said. "Changing this place means making sure no one else can build the same pattern behind a different smile." Maya looked at her. "What happens now?" Danielle picked up the blank name cards from the side table. "Now we build a system where the first person who sees something wrong does not have to stand alone." Outside, the sun slipped behind the buildings, leaving the glass walls gold for one brief minute. Danielle watched the light fade and understood that repair would not be one decision, one meeting, or one apology. It would be 1,000 smaller choices, made when no one was watching. 3 days later, Aurora Lounge reopened for a limited evening service. The brass doors had been polished until they reflected the sidewalk, but Danielle had asked the staff not to change the room too much. No new slogan on the walls. No oversized announcement about a fresh start. She knew a place could hide behind beautiful words just as easily as it could hide behind beautiful lighting. The real changes were quieter. Every employee had received a direct number for the independent reporting team. Security had been given written standards that required behavior, not appearance, as the reason for any intervention. Reservations would be handled in the order they were received. Managers would be evaluated not only by revenue, but by the way guests and staff described being treated when no executive was present. Maya stood at the host stand in a navy blouse and black slacks, her crescent moon pin still fastened at her collar. The room smelled of fresh linen, citrus, and the first trays of bread warming in the kitchen. Her hands were steady as she checked the reservation screen. Jordan stood nearby in a dark suit, reviewing the new arrival procedure with a security supervisor. He looked nervous, but different from before. Less like someone waiting to be told what to do. More like someone learning to ask why. At 6:15, a man in a worn denim jacket entered with his teenage daughter. Rain had started again, light and steady, leaving small dark circles on the shoulders of their clothes. The father paused just inside the door, looking at the glowing room as if he expected someone to stop him. Maya saw it in his face. She had seen that same pause in Danielle's eyes on the night everything changed. "Good evening," Maya said. Her voice carried clearly through the lobby. "Welcome to Aurora. Do you have a reservation, or would you like to see what is available?" The man blinked. "We do not have one. I was just hoping to get my daughter something warm before her bus leaves." Maya checked the screen. There were 2 open tables near the window. One had been marked for a possible late arrival, but the new policy was clear. A possibility was not a reservation. "I have a table by the window," she said. "It is quiet, and you will have a good view of the street." The daughter looked at her father, then smiled. It was a small smile, but it changed the shape of the whole room. Jordan stepped forward, not to follow them, but to hold the door open as a gust of rain blew in behind another guest. The security supervisor watched the entrance without suspicion, greeting people with the same calm nod. From a table near the back, Danielle observed without making herself known. She wore a charcoal coat over a soft gray sweater and kept her laptop closed beside her cup of tea. She had come to listen, not to inspect. For the first hour, she heard the ordinary sounds of a place doing its job well. Chairs sliding gently across wood, glasses meeting tabletops, a server laughing quietly with an older couple, the low rhythm of plates moving from kitchen to dining room. Then Maya walked over and placed a small bowl of soup in front of the teenage girl. "The kitchen made extra," she said. "It is on the house." The father began to protest, but Maya shook her head. "You are welcome here." Danielle looked down at her tea. The words were simple. They did not erase the past. They did not repair every person who had left through those doors feeling unwanted. But they were a beginning that could be measured in actions. Near closing time, Maya came to Danielle's table. "Was it all right?" she asked. Danielle looked around the lounge. "What do you think?" Maya followed her gaze. The father and his daughter were finishing dessert by the window. Jordan was helping an older guest find a coat. The room was full, but no one looked like they had to earn the right to sit there. Maya's shoulders eased. "I think it felt different," she said. Danielle nodded. "Different is not enough," she replied. "It has to stay different." Maya looked at the host stand, then back at Danielle. "I will help make sure it does." Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass, and inside, the warm light held. The following Monday, Danielle arrived at headquarters before the elevators filled with morning voices. She carried no umbrella because the sky was clear, but she still wore the dark wool coat from the night she had stood outside Aurora's door. It hung over one arm as she entered the small boardroom where the independent review team had arranged their findings. The table was covered with binders, notepads, and a single bowl of green apples no one had touched. Maya sat near the window beside Jordan and Luis. They had been invited to speak only if they wanted to. Danielle had made that clear twice. Across from them sat Victor Lane, no longer in his usual polished suit. He wore a plain blue shirt with the sleeves buttoned at the wrist, and he looked older than he had a week earlier. The lead reviewer, a woman named Elena Price, opened a folder and spoke without drama. "We found repeated patterns of unequal treatment, staff intimidation, and inadequate response by management," she said. "We also found that several employees tried to report concerns before this incident." Danielle listened with her hands folded on the table. She had read every page over the weekend. Still, hearing the words aloud made the room feel colder. Elena continued. "Mr. Caldwell's conduct was not an isolated failure. It was supported by unclear policies, weak oversight, and a culture that rewarded silence." Victor closed his eyes for a moment. Maya looked down at her hands. Danielle waited until Elena finished, then asked the question that had stayed with her since the rain-soaked night. What did people need that they did not receive? Elena looked around the room before answering. They needed to know that dignity was not conditional. They needed clear standards, safe reporting, and leaders who treated concerns as information rather than inconvenience. No one moved. The air conditioner hummed above them, steady and indifferent. Victor spoke first. "I failed them," he said. His voice was low. "I saw warning signs and decided they were manageable. I cared more about avoiding disruption than understanding what people were trying to tell me." Danielle looked at him. "What will you do differently?" Victor lifted his eyes. "If I am given the chance, I will listen before I defend the company. I will make sure managers are measured by the trust they build, not just the money they bring in." Danielle did not promise him anything. Accountability was not a speech, and she would not turn it into one. The board will decide your position after the review is complete, she said. Until then, you will remain away from staff operations. Victor nodded. Then Maya spoke, quietly enough that everyone leaned in. I do not want this place to become scary in a different way. Danielle turned toward her. Maya continued. I do not want people whispering because they are afraid of the next manager. I want them to know they can speak before they are afraid. Jordan nodded beside her. Luis wiped his palm against his trouser leg and said, That is the kind of place I would want my daughter to work. Danielle felt the words settle somewhere deep. She looked through the window at the city below, at people crossing sidewalks beneath a bright spring sky, each one carrying a story no stranger could see at first glance. Then we will build that place, she said. She opened a new document on the table screen. It listed the changes in plain language. Independent reporting, regular staff forms, transparent guest policies, and leadership reviews based on conduct as well as performance. At the bottom was one final line. Every person who enters our doors deserves respect before they explain who they are. Maya read it silently, then looked at Danielle. Can I help write the training? She asked. Danielle smiled for the first time that morning. Yes, she said. You can. The meeting ended without applause. There was no reason for it. Repair was not something to celebrate before it had been done. But when Maya left the boardroom, she walked a little taller, and Danielle noticed that Jordan held the elevator door open for her without being asked. It was a small thing. It was also how change began. 2 weeks later, the training room at Aurora Lounge smelled faintly of coffee, fresh paint, and the citrus cleaner used on the wood floor before opening. The chairs were arranged in a wide circle instead of neat rows. Danielle had asked for that. She did not want anyone hiding behind a table or pretending this was a lecture they could survive by taking notes. Maya stood near the front beside a large screen, holding a small stack of cards with questions written in black ink. Her crescent moon pin caught the morning light. Jordan sat near the doorway with 2 new security team members, and Luis leaned against the back wall with his arms folded, listening more closely than he wanted anyone to notice. Danielle took the last empty chair in the circle. She had no place at the front. Today is not about memorizing the right words, Maya said. Her voice was steady. It is about recognizing the moment when someone is being treated differently and deciding not to let that moment pass. On the screen was a simple question. What do you do when a guest does not look like you expected? A young server raised her hand. You welcome them, she said. Maya nodded. Yes. And if someone tells you they do not belong? The room became quiet. Jordan looked at the floor for a second, then lifted his head. You ask what happened. You do not assume the person making the complaint is the problem. Danielle watched Maya's expression soften. That is right, she said. You listen first. The session moved slowly. People spoke about fear, pressure, and the old habit of waiting for a manager to decide what was acceptable. No one tried to make themselves sound perfect. That was the rule Danielle cared about most. Perfection could become another way to hide. Honesty was harder, but it gave people somewhere to begin. Near the end, a woman from the kitchen raised a question that made the room still. What if the manager is the one doing it? Maya looked toward Danielle, but Danielle did not answer for her. Maya took a breath. Then you use the reporting line. You talk to the independent team. You document what you saw, and you tell someone you trust. You do not have to carry it alone. The woman nodded slowly. Jordan added, and if anyone tries to punish you for speaking, that becomes another report. There are consequences now. His words were simple, but they did not sound rehearsed. They sounded earned. After the session, Danielle walked through the lounge while the staff prepared for lunch service. The chandeliers were dimmed against the bright afternoon sun. A florist arranged white flowers near the entrance, and the soft scrape of chairs against the floor drifted through the room. Maya joined Danielle by the east window. I was scared to lead that, she admitted. You did not look scared, Danielle said. Maya smiled faintly. I was. I just did it anyway. Danielle looked out at the sidewalk below. Courage is not always loud, she said. Sometimes it is just telling the truth when you know it could cost you something. Maya held the stack of cards against her chest. Do you think people will believe the changes are real? Danielle considered the question. Across the room, Jordan greeted a delivery driver with the same attention he gave a member in a tailored suit. Luis helped a new server carry a tray without making a joke about it. Small choices. Ordinary choices. Not because we say they are real, Danielle said. Because we keep proving it. That evening, a regular guest arrived at the door and asked for the same corner table he always reserved. It had already been given to a family who arrived first. The new host explained this calmly, offering another table with the same view. The guest frowned, ready to argue. Maya stepped beside the host, not to take over, but to support her. "We honor reservations," Maya said. "And we honor people who are already here." The guest looked around the room, then at the family by the window. After a long moment, he nodded and accepted the other table. Danielle watched from the back of the lounge. No one applauded. The music continued. Glasses clinked softly. But something had shifted. The rules were no longer decorations on a wall. They had become a way people moved through the room. The final review arrived on a quiet Thursday afternoon, folded into a plain white envelope and placed on Danielle's desk without ceremony. Outside her office, the city was washed in pale spring light. A delivery truck groaned at the curb below. Somewhere down the hall, a printer clicked through pages. Danielle sat for a long moment before opening the envelope, not because she feared the findings, but because she knew a document could never fully hold the weight of what people had carried in silence. The review confirmed what the staff had already said. Trent's conduct had created a pattern of exclusion. Victor's decisions had allowed that pattern to continue. The report also noted the changes that had begun since Danielle stepped in: staff protections, independent reporting, clear guest standards, and regular listening sessions. At the bottom, Elena Price had written one sentence in her careful handwriting: "A culture changes when people believe their truth will be met with action." Danielle read it twice. Then she called Victor. He arrived 20 minutes later, wearing the same plain blue shirt he had worn at the first review meeting. He stood near the door, waiting for permission to sit. Danielle did not make him wait long. "The board has made its decision," she said. Victor nodded once. "I understand. You will not return to regional operations," Danielle said. "Your suspension is now permanent removal from that role." He closed his eyes briefly. "That is fair." Danielle watched him. She had expected anger, excuses, maybe one last attempt to make the damage sound smaller than it was. Instead, Victor looked tired. Not defeated, just stripped of the distance he had used to protect himself. "There is another option," Danielle continued. He looked up. The board approved a 6-month transition assignment with the external compliance team. No authority over staff. No management decisions. You will support the review process at other locations if they agree to accept your work. Victor's expression changed. "Why offer me that?" Danielle leaned back in her chair. "Because accountability should not become another word for pretending people cannot change. You failed people. You will live with that. But if you are willing to do the work, you can help prevent the same failure somewhere else." Victor's eyes lowered. "I am willing." "Then prove it," Danielle said. He nodded again, slower this time. When he left, Danielle stood by the window and watched him cross the lobby below. He did not look back. That afternoon, Maya came into Danielle's office carrying a folder of training notes and a paper cup of tea. "I heard the review is finished," she said. Danielle motioned to the chair across from her. "It is." Maya sat down, then looked at the envelope on the desk. "Does that mean everything is over?" Danielle smiled softly. "It means one chapter is over." Maya let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "I am still learning how to trust a good day." Danielle understood that feeling. She had known it when Aurora was only an idea written on a yellow legal pad, when every success felt temporary and every closed door felt personal. "You do not have to trust it all at once," she said. "You only have to notice what people do next." Maya opened her folder. Inside were new training cards, each one built from the stories employees had shared. No one had been named. No one had been turned into an example without consent. On the first card, Maya had written, "When someone says they feel unwelcome, do not explain the room to them. Change the room." Danielle read the line and looked at Maya. "That should be on every manager's desk." Maya smiled, this time without fear hiding behind it. "I thought you might say that." Later, Danielle visited Aurora Lounge just before dinner service. The windows held the last gold light of the day. Jordan stood at the entrance, greeting each guest with the same easy respect. Luis was behind the bar, teaching a new employee how to remember names without making anyone feel watched. Maya moved between the host's stand and the dining room, confident but never hurried. Danielle stayed near the back, unseen for a while, listening to the room breathe. It was not perfect. It never would be. But it was honest now, and honesty gave people a place to begin. 1 month later, Danielle returned to Aurora Lounge without calling ahead. It was early evening, and the air outside carried the soft warmth of late spring. The sidewalk was dry, the planters beside the entrance were full of white flowers, and the brass letters on the door caught the fading sun. She wore a light tin coat over a navy dress and carried no canvas tote this time, only a small leather folder beneath her arm. For a moment, she stood across the street and watched the lounge through the glass. Inside, the room was alive with ordinary things. A couple shared dessert near the window. A group of co-workers leaned close over small plates and laughed at something one of them had said. A server moved carefully between tables with a tray balanced against one hand. Nothing looked dramatic. Danielle had learned that was often the best sign. Jordan saw her first. He opened the door before she reached it, not because he recognized the chief executive officer, but because he had been opening the door for everyone. "Good evening," he said. "Welcome to Aurora." Danielle smiled. "Good evening, Jordan." His face brightened with recognition, but his posture did not change. "Would you like a table?" "Just a quiet one," she said. "Anywhere you have room." He checked the screen, then looked toward the east window. "There is a table near the glass. It is one of our best views." Danielle followed him inside. The lounge smelled of warm bread, citrus, and fresh flowers. The same piano music played softly in the background, but it no longer sounded like something trying to cover a silence. Maya stood at the host station, speaking with a woman in a wheelchair who had arrived with her teenage son. Maya moved around the desk so they could speak at the same level. "We have a table with plenty of space near the window," she said. "Would that be comfortable for you?" The woman smiled with relief. "That would be lovely." Danielle watched Maya guide them toward the table, not with performance, but with attention. When Maya turned and saw Danielle, her expression opened into a surprised smile. "You came in quietly," she said. "I wanted to see the room," Danielle replied. Maya looked around at the guests, the staff, the open tables, and the gentle movement of the evening. "What do you think?" Danielle sat at the table Jordan had offered. "I think it is learning." Maya nodded. "So am I." A few minutes later, a man in a pressed suit approached the host stand with a frustrated look. He pointed toward the east window. "I requested that table when I called this afternoon," he said. Maya checked the reservation list. "I am sorry, sir. That table was not reserved. It is currently occupied." The man looked past her toward Danielle, then back at Maya. "Can you ask her to move? I have an important client arriving." Maya's face stayed calm. "I cannot ask a guest to leave a table they were offered. I can show you another table with the same seating for your client." The man sighed, clearly unhappy. Jordan stepped close enough to support Maya without crowding her. "I can help you with your coats while Maya shows you the options," he said. The man looked from one of them to the other. For a second, Danielle saw the old instinct in the room, the pressure to make the difficult person happy at someone else's expense. Then it passed. The man accepted the other table. Maya exhaled slowly after he walked away. Danielle caught her eye from across the room and gave one small nod. Later, Maya brought Danielle a cup of tea. "On the house," she said with a quiet smile. Danielle looked at the steam rising between them. "You do not have to do that." "I know," Maya said. "I wanted to." Danielle wrapped both hands around the cup. Outside, the evening light faded into blue, and the windows reflected the room back at itself. Not perfect, not finished, but changed by people who had decided that welcome was not something you earned. It was something you gave. By the time Danielle finished her tea, the first streetlights had come on outside Aurora Lounge. Their glow stretched across the sidewalk in long gold lines, catching on the glass doors and the wet shine of a passing taxi. Maya returned to the host's stand. Jordan welcomed a couple who had come in laughing from the cool evening air, and the room settled into its steady rhythm. Danielle stayed by the window for a few more minutes, watching without needing anyone to notice her. At the next table, the woman in the wheelchair spoke with her son over dessert. Near the bar, Louise showed a new server how to carry 2 plates without rushing. Every sound was small. Forks against porcelain. A chair moving gently across the floor. The low piano melody threading through the room. Danielle remembered the first night, when the same windows had reflected rain and a man had decided she did not belong. The memory was still there. It would always be there, but it no longer owned the room. Maya came back with a folded note in her hand. "This came through the reporting line," she said. Danielle looked at the note, but did not open it right away. Do you want to read it? Maya nodded. Danielle unfolded the paper. The message was short. I have worked here for 3 years. Tonight was the first time I believed I could tell the truth and keep my job. Danielle looked up. Maya's eyes were bright, but she did not look away. That is why we keep the line open, Danielle said. Not because every problem is easy. Because no one should have to carry it alone. Maya took the note and placed it carefully in a small folder beside the host's stand. I used to think being brave meant saying something big, she said. Danielle smiled softly. Sometimes it means opening a door. A few minutes later, an older woman approached the entrance from the sidewalk. She wore a faded blue raincoat and held a grocery bag close to her side. She paused under the awning, looking through the glass at the warm tables and the people inside. Danielle saw the hesitation in her face before anyone else did. It was the same hesitation she had seen in the father with his daughter, in the woman by the host stand, in every person who had learned to expect a room to judge them before it welcomed them. Maya saw her too. She did not wait for the woman to knock. She crossed the lobby, opened the door, and smiled. Good evening, she said. Come in. We have a table ready whenever you are. The woman blinked, then smiled back. I only wanted a cup of coffee, she said. Then you came to the right place, Maya replied. Danielle stood slowly from her table. Jordan noticed her coat and stepped forward. May I get the door for you? He asked. Danielle looked around one last time. The lounge was still elegant. The brass still gleamed. The music still played low beneath the conversations. But the most important thing had changed without anyone needing to announce it. People were no longer being measured before they were welcomed. Danielle placed a hand lightly on Jordan's arm. Thank you, she said. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. She walked beneath the streetlights, past the windows that now held the warm reflection of a room learning how to be human. She had not changed the whole world, but she had changed one door, one workplace, and the hearts of the people who would stand there after her. For tonight, that was enough.